But right now, I want to introduce a very special guy. You hear him on Redeemer Radio as well, but Dr. Tom McGovern graduated from Mayo Medical School and came to Fort Wayne after serving 8 years in the United States Army, where he specialized in dermatology. For the past 12 years, he's focused especially on treating skin cancers. Dr. Tom, his wife Sally, and their 7 children are active members of St. Patrick's Parish in Arcola. And as a co-owner of the Fort Wayne Dermatology Consultants, Dr. Tom can give us a very good perspective on how Obamacare will impact the religious liberty and consciences of both doctors and patients. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tom McGovern.
I have been serving the culture of life as a physician for 22 years since I graduated from medical school at the Mayo Clinic. And religious liberty is important to me because during my time in the Army, my religious liberty was denied to me. In 1990, during my internship at Fort Gordon, Georgia, I was supposed to start with 2 months of obstetrics and gynecology. But when the head of that department learned that I would not dispense contraceptives or assist with sterilizations, he kicked me out of the rotation and refused to allow me to learn gynecologic care. The training program directors punished me with an extra month of general surgery, the most grueling and time-consuming rotation in the hospital. They wanted to see if I was some kind of religious zealot or troublemaker. However, by the end of that month-long rotation, they asked me if I wanted to become a surgeon. My reward for that was an extra elective, which I did at the urging of one of the general surgery residents in dermatology. Had it not been for God's plan for following my conscience, I would not have discovered a mentor and a specialty that I deeply cherish now. During that internship year, physicians, especially my fellow interns, ostracized me, but that was minor compared to what's going on in our culture now. As a small business owner, I now have to consider what to do about health insurance for my employees. I am one of 6 owners. 2 of us are Catholic and do not want to submit to the HHS mandate. And we have over 50 employees. I've already told my partners that I do not want to participate in providing the mandate benefits. What are my options? Well, I can convince my other partners to stop providing health insurance altogether so that I don't have to provide the objectionable benefits. But with this option, we have to pay a penalty. a tax. That will further help fund the government's takeover of health care. Or I can continue to help provide objectionable benefits against my Catholic conscience, or I can give up ownership in my group and become an employee of my partners. Does this mandate mean that I can no longer be a Catholic business owner and provide health insurance for my employees? For an administration that trumpets choice, it is not giving me the choice to remain a Catholic business owner and provide morally acceptable health insurance. Because I am a victim of tolerance, at least the government's definition of tolerance, that will only tolerate those who agree with them. They will not tolerate those who are intolerant of sin, and it is a sin to abridge a people's religious freedom. We will not tolerate lies. They will not tolerate the truth, at least the truth that religious freedom is an inalienable right. Tolerance is only good when it serves the truth. Tolerance is a dictator when it serves lies. As a physician, I am obliged and trained to support and serve the culture of life. This culture believes that right makes might. On the other hand, the culture of death believes that might makes right, and it will use all means necessary to impose its materialistic and relativistic beliefs on us. I would like to lay out how this culture works using 3 little words: can, should, and must. I will apply this to 3 areas affected by the mandate: contraception, abortion, and religious freedom. With regard to contraception, the first state law that said you can use contraceptives was passed in the United States in 1936. For the last few decades, our culture has said that you should use contraceptives if you are a responsible adult, and now it is saying that you must purchase contraceptives for anyone who wants them, even minors, against their parents' will and without their knowledge. The Department of Health and Human Services says that, and I quote from their January press release, "Scientists have abundant evidence that birth control has significant health benefits for women and their families." Really? Significant health benefits? As a physician, I would be remiss if I did not challenge this statement. First, this mandate classifies pregnancy and fertility as diseases. Second, combination oral contraceptives increase cervical, liver, and breast cancer, and this culture often suppresses the scientific studies supporting this. Third, oral contraceptives increase blood clots in the brain, heart, and lungs, and escalate the frequency of depression and drive up the rates of unplanned pregnancies and abortion. Finally, the divorce rate among first-time married couples who use contraceptives is 40%, compared to less than 5% for couples who do not use contraceptives. Based on this evidence, what can we conclude? Instead of providing significant health benefits for women and their families, greater access to birth control will harm women and their families. But this is exactly what our government is telling us that we must purchase, even if we do not want to, for religious reasons. With regard to abortion, the first law in our nation's history that said that you can have an abortion in limited cases was passed in 1967. During the last 20 to 30 years, societal pressure says that you should have an abortion in cases of rape, incest, disability, financial hardship, or inconvenient timing. And now the HHS mandate says that we must underwrite the cost for certain abortion-causing drugs. The trajectory of this can to should to must thinking has led the Chinese to tell many women that they must have abortions. Do we want that in our future? The American, that's right. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology says that physicians who believe abortion is wrong must refer patients who want any form of legal medical care, including abortion, to physicians who will perform them. In the culture of death, the legal becomes the ethical. The should becomes the must. The culture of death has become the default ethical position of the group that certifies the competency of those physicians who care for unborn babies and their mothers. If freedom of religion is abridged, this pressure will only increase on physicians who serve the culture of life. If you want physicians who serve the culture of life, you must fight for religious freedom. And with regard to religious freedom, our country was founded because victims of religious persecution sought a home where they could freely exercise their religious beliefs in three arenas: those of words, works, and worship. In words, they sought the freedom to speak about what they believed, even in the public square and legislative bodies. They sought to perform works of charity mandated by their beliefs that would meet the needs of all persons regardless of their faith. And they wanted the freedom to worship God in their own churches according to their own consciences. Until now, our laws have said that we can freely exercise our religious belief in words, works, and worship. But now there is great public pressure telling us that we should exercise our religious beliefs only in our places of worship once a week, and that we should not publicly oppose certain immoral behaviors. We are only a short step away from being told by the government that we must exercise our religious beliefs only in our places of worship, and that we must not speak out against any actions that we find morally objectionable. During the last 3.5 years, whenever our President or Secretary of State have spoken about freedom of religion, they used the phrase, freedom of worship. This is significant. Words and works are thus silently exempted from our freedom of religion. There are many in power who would happily silence our freedom of religion regarding our words and our works. We have already seen this must not about our words and works applied to Catholic adoption agencies in Illinois, Boston, and San Francisco. These agencies must not receive state or local funds for adoptions if they want to follow a Catholic conscience. We physicians are being pressured by the culture of death to leave our religious beliefs at the doors of our hospitals and clinics. But if all of us work to protect religious liberty, we will create a culture where a physician can still practice and promote the culture of life. If we do not protect our religious liberty, physicians may be forced to choose between abandoning their moral principles or abandoning their medical careers. What kind of physicians do you want? Do you want physicians who are dedicated to the culture of life, or do you want physicians who are dedicated to the culture of death? Does right make might, or does might make right? We supposedly have separation of church and state in this country. What we are now seeing is subordination of church to state. Religious freedom is not something granted by the government. Religious freedom is granted by God, and the government has the responsibility to protect it. We must fight this mandate. We can fight it most powerfully with prayer and sacrifices. Then we must also fight through the courts, education, and the ballot box. As G.K. Chesterton said, a patriot must hate his country enough to believe it worth changing, and love it enough to believe it worth changing. I believe America is worth changing. We have a moral imperative to fight. Those with opposing views also believe that they have a moral imperative to fight. So if we are to defeat their ideas, we must be unrelenting in our effort. The culture of death believes that might makes right, and that culture will abridge our freedom to achieve its goals. In his book, The Soul of Battle, on how great liberators vanquished tyranny, Victor Davis Hanson demonstrates that moral confidence plays a huge role in determining the winners of a war. In other words, right does make might. In our culture war, we have the moral high ground and must not relinquish it. And we have the high ground not because God is on our side. We have the moral high ground in this battle for religious freedom because we are on God's side. As Abraham Lincoln said, let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tom McGovern.